Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are talking about homeschooling during the month of May, and we have our second speaker today. Last week, we had Dr. Say Lee talking about how he educated his children in multiple ways. And today, we have his daughter, Sayana Lee, here with us to talk about how she homeschooled herself in high school and also talk about her educational journey because, as her dad mentioned, she's done it all: public school, private school, charter school, homeschool, all that. So we're gonna hear from somebody who actually did it herself. So Sienna, thank you so much for coming here and visiting us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to answering all your questions.
Sounds good. I think a lot of the parents are going to be very interested in hearing your story and finding out, especially how your homeschooling journey in high school as well. Because I think because of COVID and distance learning that we had to do, more people are open to that option, but they're just not sure. It's
Mm,
almost like a black box for them because it's not as well known, like how people do this. And
mhm.
so, I know I've known you since I think you were two. So you're like my child, like my niece, I feel like, because, like you and my son are the same age. But I look at you and I'm like, she is so mature. I love the person you're growing into, and I'm so glad that you're here to actually share your wisdom with us, because I think we have a lot to learn from you. So tell us
Mm,
a little bit about yourself and your educational journey.
mhm. Well, thank you for the warm introduction. Like Mrs. One said, my name is Sayana, and I'm currently a sophomore at UC Berkeley. Or I'm a rising sophomore actually, since I just finished my freshman year. And I've had a very interesting educational path. I'd say you might have heard from my dad, but basically, I was in public school from K through second grade. And then third grade through sixth grade, I was at a private school where I was part-time homeschooled. So I was in school at a physical classroom twice a week, and then I was at home learning from either my mom, my dad, my younger brother, or I was just learning by myself. I was doing that 3 days a week. And then during seventh grade, I decided to try public school again. And I loved it, had a lot of fun, made a lot of great friends. But my dad opened a private school during my during the summer between my seventh grade and my eighth grade year, and it just made sense for me to go to my dad's school, my dad's private school. So I did that for my eighth grade year, and then unfortunately they didn't have any high school programs, and I really wanted to continue what I was doing at my dad's private school, but I also realized I wouldn't be able to do it by myself because there was going to be no other high schoolers. They were able to support me during my high school years just because that wasn't what the school was designed for. So I went back to public school, met all those friends I met in seventh grade again. This time we were in high school together, and I enjoyed my time there again. Like I said, I loved people. I love the people I met there. I was really involved in school, doing orchestra, volleyball. It was involved in different clubs, and I did well in school. But I also realized that I was spending a lot of time just studying, just trying to like do other things that others like other my other peers were doing, even if I wasn't interested in it, because like, oh, they're like, oh, it looks good on your resume, or you need this for college. So I found myself doing things that maybe I wasn't super interested in, or maybe I felt like it wasn't worth my time, but I was doing them anyways. So I just didn't have any time to explore things that I was interested in because I was in this kind of hamster wheel trying to keep up with other people at Woodbridge or the school that I went to. And so I decided over the summer, maybe about a month before school started for 11th grade, I somehow convinced my mom, who was definitely more traditional in how she saw schooling, although relatively, because she did homeschool us.
Right.
But yeah, I convinced her. I convinced my dad was already convinced, but I had to convince my mom. So about a month before 11th grade started, I dropped out of Woodbridge High School and enrolled in this charter school, which allowed me to self school myself. And I did that for 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade. So yeah, the summer between my ninth grade and my 10th grade year, I did that. So that's I'd say I definitely tried almost everything, I'd say, in terms of schooling. And I think, yeah, it just depends on the person, like what type of personality, what drives them. I think that determines which school fits them best. But I've definitely had experience with different types of schooling, and I think it's really helped me inform my decisions on what I decided to do for my future, but also what I decided to do in high school, because it was very untraditional, and a lot of friends looked at me like I was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like your dad said, and your mom also, that you were doing well in traditional school. So,
Right.
so I'm sure, wasn't that kind of risky for you to try this new venture? Like, you choosing to homeschool yourself, because when you're in high
Mm,
school, like the path is kind of set up for you. The counselors go talk about A through G requirements
exactly.
and all that.
Hmm.
So I guess you kind of touched upon it, but maybe expand a little bit more on like why you chose to homeschool, like
Mm,
route. What's some of the benefits of doing that versus staying at the traditional school that you were doing well in anyway?
right. Right. So like you said, I wasn't failing classes. I was doing well in school. I was learning what they teach you in school, and I was very well connected within the public school that I was at. But like I was saying, I felt like I didn't have time to explore things that I was interested in. I felt like in ninth grade, I felt like I didn't have an idea of what I wanted for my future, and that scared me. And not that you have to know in ninth grade. I think most people don't know in ninth grade, but for me, I felt it was a priority to try to explore and figure out maybe what direction I wanted to go in. Because in ninth grade, I was like, I could do anything. I'm not sure which one fits me best or which one I enjoy the most. I just don't have enough experience. And so I saw the value, not in what I was learning inside the classroom, but I saw more value in what I would learn outside the classroom. And I felt like I could not do that in public school because I was so busy. Like I mentioned, there's volleyball games all the time, orchestra practices, concerts, of course, homework and studying. And so it's not that it was like unbalanced or was overwhelming. I just felt like there wasn't enough time for me to like find an internship or get a job or like take classes that were outside of the ATG requirements. Because yeah, I think high school is designed to get you into college, or it's designed to prepare you for college, but not necessarily prepare you for the real world. I feel like there's not much like outside classroom learning that happens in a public school. So that was definitely a big factor in me deciding to, change schools and decide to self-school myself. I think another reason why I chose it as well is because I knew deep down, like I knew that it wasn't something that I couldn't do. I think my parents, especially my mom, I think she was definitely concerned that it was a risk that would end poorly for me, just because it required a lot of like personal time management, being disciplined, just trying to navigate something that people don't really know how to navigate. I think I had a couple of friends who homeschooled in high school, but they were like doing things that are very different than what I had envisioned for my schooling. Like they were like really involved in sports because they wanted to play professionally, or like a dancer. Whereas I was like, I'm just here to try to find out what I want to do with my life. So yeah, I think that was definitely some risks, but I knew that I had the skills. I could be disciplined if I wanted to. I could manage my time well if I wanted to. And so I think it was definitely very risky. I'd say it's one of the riskier decisions I've made. I'm only 18, but I'd say that's the riskiest decision I've made. Just because also the school that I was at, it just chugs out students that go to like Ivy Leagues, like really renowned private schools like UC Berkeley, UCLA. And so I knew that if I stick there, I would, go to a college and do well. But I also knew that I would probably still be as lost as I was in ninth grade.
How about, do you think you can give us examples of how what kind of things you did like sophomore year and then junior year and senior year?
Hmm.
Because I think they'll be very helpful if we can hear from you what kind of classes you did and how you fulfill
Hmm.
some of the requirements.
Right. So for me, I was kind of the charter school I was with. In order to graduate high school, I had to fulfill the A through G requirements. And that's pretty standard at any high school. So I was just focused. The classes I took were kind of focused on those requirements because I did need to graduate from high school. That was a
Mm.
priority of mine. And so I learned from my dad that one semester of community college is actually worth a year's worth of high school. So, for example, I took one semester of world history at a community college, and on my transcript, it translates to a year's worth of high school world history. I don't have to take the AP test because what's the point? I already have college credit and I'm saving time. It's twice as fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, and personally, in my opinion, I think AP difficulty, like the class, it's pretty similar to what you're going to find at a community college. If anything, community college is going to be easier. So it's actually, in my opinion, it's easier to get that college credit through community college than taking an AP test, especially because the AP test is a standardized test and it's designed to have some students fail. Like they put it on a curve. That way, only some students pass and some students fail. So I think that was like very key, and that was like a key realization that also definitely was like, okay, maybe it is a good idea to self-school myself instead of sticking in high school because it'll save me time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so sophomore year, junior year and senior year, I was obviously taking the same. I was taking the same amount of classes, but I was taking different types of classes because I had more room on my schedule now. So for example, I took, I think my junior year, I took a public health class because I was interested in public health and I was just curious. And that class actually really sparked my interest in public health. So that's kind of, like I mentioned, I'm minoring in global health. So I'd say that class really helped me. I took like an anthropology class. I took chemistry, world history, U.S. history. I took an additional 3 semesters worth of language. So I had like 4 years, I think, worth of language. I took, math, the English or language arts. So I'm not sure exactly what the A3G requirements categorize it as, but I basically just was trying to fulfill those requirements through community college classes. And if I couldn't do that, I was taking an AP test. So right now, I just transferred, I think a couple months ago, UC Berkeley released what they were going to accept for all their students, and Berkeley ended up accepting 50 of my units from community college, which is crazy because I was saving myself like a year and a half worth of college. And so, yeah, that's something that I think was really crucial. It's just knocking down those A3G requirements, but doing that through community college because it's twice as fast. Obviously, it's twice as fast, meaning you're learning way more in a shorter amount of time. But at the same time, if you know you can handle it, I think in the end game, it pays off really well.
So do you think when you're taking these college level classes as a sophomore, you were kind of ready for it? I mean, was your language skill good enough? Um, because all the kids kind of come at different levels
Mm-hmm.
and different strengths and
Mm-hmm.
weaknesses. So
Right.
do you feel like you were ready for some of these college level works when you're a
Uh,
sophomore?
I definitely eased into it. When I was a sophomore, I recognized that, I don't know if I'm ready for community college. And so I actually took a history class there's the community college that I'm with. I have a relationship with the neighboring high school.
Okay.
And they offer college classes through the high school. So it's taught on the campus. And so it's basically, I took one of those classes to kind of introduce me to community college. So that's one thing that I did. I also took the first 2 classes I took that history class, was that world history class that I took that was taught at a high school for high school students. And the second thing that I did was I took a language class, knowing that it wasn't like a math class or a science class or a writing class. So that's one thing that I did to kind of ease myself into it. I definitely eased myself that first semester. And then once I recognized okay, this is something that I can do, then I started adding science classes and writing classes and more difficult classes. But I think for me, I recognize that I think I have proficient reading and writing skills, and I can if I can't figure it out by myself, I can always reach out to professors or my other classmates. So that's one thing that I feel like I recognize that I could do, and something that I developed, which really helped me in community college. But I also think, I knew that I had proficient reading and writing skills. And I feel like that was really important in making that decision, because if I felt like I couldn't take community college classes or couldn't succeed in community college, I probably would have stayed at Woodbridge. But because I recognized like, oh, I can read and write at a higher level, then I felt like it was not too drastic of a switch.
Sounds good. How about, so you said that you did, like one semester was equal to a year of high school course.
Mm-hmm.
So that allows you to
Mm-hmm.
take all these other things. But were you also, did you have room in your schedule to do like the internship and things like that that you mentioned that you wanted to do?
Yes. So my sophomore year, I interned for like a small startup. I worked on as kind of an assistant to their like marketing and design person. So I was helping like stage things and do stuff with their like social media and promote stuff and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I did. I also ended up working a lot. I worked at my dad has a private practice. I ended up working as like a front and back office staff member. So that involved me, communicating with adults, with the patients, and communicating with like collecting their copay, calling in their prescriptions, and doing their vitals and stuff like that. And I also worked as my dad's personal assistant, because as you may have heard, he has like 4 jobs.
He has a lot of
So
interest.
there's a lot of interest, and he's not the most organized, and I definitely would categorize myself as an organized person. So I also worked as his personal assistant, and that involved me, paying bills, running payroll for his like the different places that he worked at, like running errands for him, just organizing all of his paperwork and everything. So I think I developed a lot of real world skills, which is something that I was looking for, because I didn't want to like go into college not knowing how to do basic stuff. Um, so those are like things that I kind of added into my time, as like because I had more time. I also had the opportunity to travel to Malawi, Africa again. I think looking back, if I had stayed at Woodbridge High School, at the public school, I probably wouldn't have been able to travel on this medical mission trip again. I'd gone the summer between my ninth grade and 10th grade year. And then I did it again between my 11th grade and 12th grade year. And I probably wouldn't have been able to, because I was too busy working on college apps or studying or something like that. But because I was able to kind of manage my time in a different way than I would have in high school, it allowed me like these 2 weeks to travel to Malawi and serve the people there. So those are just some examples of how I filled my time. That definitely was a concern of my mom's. Like, what are you going to do with your extra time? I don't want you just sitting around watching TV or just doing nothing. And so, yeah, I definitely had to prove myself that first year and show, I'm going to make the most of the time that I'm giving myself. So those
Good.
are just some
Um,
examples.
there's a question from the listeners, viewers. Is there anything you could change about what you did? Some now looking back.
Mm. I have actually been asked this before. I think I would say no, because I think all the mistakes that I made along the way helped me grow as a person, or helped me like make informed decisions. And I think, yeah, there was like some like class choices that I made, or like internships or jobs or that I took or I didn't take, that could have changed the way I did things. But I think for the most part, everything kind of led to like a pretty, I'd say like a path that I am like okay taking. Because yeah, I think there's like people that I've met along the way that I say are worth the mistakes that I made with regards to like classes. Like there's a couple classes that I chose to take, and I was like, oh, that was kind of a mistake. But I'd say in the end it was worth it. And then a lot of people ask me if I regret leaving public school, which I feel like is kind of along the same question. I'd say the answer is no. The only regret I have, I think, with regards to public school is my brother is 3 grades below me, or 3 grades younger than me. And I think last year when I was a senior and he was a freshman, I was like, oh, that could have been a special like chance and opportunity for us to be at the same school, and me kind of being able to like mentor him or like provide him mentors. I think that's like one thing that I kind of regret is not being there for my brother. But other than that, I'd say I think that the path I chose just to like kind of self school myself, I think that's the path that best fit me for that time. So I'd say no regrets, no
Sounds good.
mistakes.
So I, I love all the experiences that you got to have, and in some ways hack the college admissions process, taking all those required classes in a shorter
Mm,
amount of time. But so what are some of the most challenging things about homeschooling? You kind of mentioned being, time management
mhm,
and being self-motivated. Can you give us some
mhm.
examples, some of the challenges you've had to dealt with?
Yeah. So in high school, you're with classmates all the time. They keep you accountable. Your teachers keep you accountable. They're on top of you. In community college, honestly, the professors, if you fail the class, they're like, it's fine. I have students that are passing. And so I feel like it's very different. I feel like in high school, the teachers will be proactive for you, but in college, you have to be proactive for yourself. I think that's something that I struggled with a little bit at the beginning was like, asking questions or like asking to speak with the professor during like asking, requesting for office hours or something like that. Whereas in high school, it's already built in. Like they have tutorial. That's where you go and ask them. Whereas in college, they have office hours, but sometimes there's conflicts and whatnot because they're just doing their office hours whenever it's convenient for them. And so I think that's something that I struggled with a little bit was kind of being really proactive and realizing all the decisions were on my hands, not on like my teachers or my classmates or even my parents. I think my parents took after my sophomore year, they went very hands off, especially with my mom. My mom was definitely more like on top of me my sophomore year, just to make sure that I wasn't like doing things I shouldn't be doing or like off the wrong track or whatever. But yeah, I think my junior senior year, it was definitely on me to like get my grades up, or if I had questions, I had to reach out to the professor instead of the professor kind of reaching out to us or whatever to see if we had questions. And so I think that's one thing that was kind of a hard adjustment. I think time management is huge. Like I said, I was home. I only had like in-person class maybe 3 times a week, and I was going for a couple of hours maybe. And so the rest of the time I was at home, and it's so easy to get distracted at home, especially because my parents both work and my brother was at school, so there's nobody home. And so, I could have just been doing nothing for all my parents knew, but I recognized like, I was given this opportunity. My parents were okay with me, self-schooling myself. So I really had to take advantage of the time I was given. And that's, I wasn't productive all the time. I definitely had my moments where I'm just watching TV or Korean dramas or just like on my phone, scrolling through Instagram or whatever. But at the same time, I was given this amount of time and I was given this freedom that my parents kind of allowed me to have. And so I recognized it kind of as a challenge. So I was like, okay, they're seeing if I can do it and I need to prove to them that I can do it. So in that sense, that's kind of how I overcame that kind of hurdle. And then, yeah, I think discipline was something that was another thing that I don't think I would have been able to do it if I wasn't as disciplined as I had become. I think that's, kind of what happened, kind of because of what happened in eighth grade. In eighth grade, I had to, at the school that I was at with my dad, it was on me to make sure that I was keeping on track with my math or my writing, or I was reading enough books, or that I was completing the certain like badges or the certain steps. Because at my dad's school, it was all about like independence and self-learning and like pushing yourself. If you want to learn it, then you learn it by yourself, or you figure it out with the help of your peers or reaching out to people. So I think because of what kind of those skills that were instilled in me in eighth grade, it was a little bit easier of a transition when I started 10th grade, just because I kind of already knew how to be disciplined or how to like manage my time, stuff like that. But I think those are, I always tell people self-schooling is not for everybody. A lot of people have certain expectations for high school, which includes like friends, going to like dances, games, whatnot. But just for me, it was a very different expectation. And so I think if you're encouraging your kids or you're trying to like figure out what's best for your kids, you have to realize like understand what your kids' priorities are for high school. Like if they're there to like figure out what they want to do with life, or if they're trying to like really focus on one thing, then maybe homeschooling's for them because they know how to be disciplined for that one thing, or they know that this is the opportunity to like figure things out. Whereas if they're just kind of there to just try to get into college, I don't think homeschooling is that route, because yeah, it's very challenging to be self-disciplined and manage your time and just be on top of yourself, because it's so easy to slack off and relax. Yeah.
We have another question from one of the people listening. What
Hmm.
advice do you have for other teens who are considering this route or are already
Hmm.
homeschooling?
Mm. Um, I think for me, at least, a community was very important. I think that's one of the few reasons why I was able to like go through it smoothly. I recognized my mom also was on top of me about it, but I recognized that I'm very social. I need to see people regularly, but outside my family, I'm very extroverted, and so I draw energy from people. And so obviously homeschooling means I'm not seeing people. I only see people a couple times a week, maybe at community college. But other than that, it's very easy to just all of a sudden become very seclusive. And so for me, I recognized that pretty early on. And so I made sure I was doing things outside of school where I would see people. So I like found this, I played the violin. I was in an orchestra at public school. And so I found this Korean orchestra, youth orchestra that I joined. And so I had practiced like every Sunday. So I saw like, friends. I made friends every Sunday at that orchestra. And then I played club volleyball as well for 2 years. I also was like working as a running coach, like a youth running coach. So I was interacting with like younger kids and seeing them and investing in them. So I just found ways to like integrate myself into other communities, just because I didn't have that community at public school anymore, and like that camaraderie that you kind of develop in public school. And so I think for me, my advice would be just find a community. It can be like a homeschooling community. In my case, I found community like in orchestra and volleyball, at that running team, at church for me too as well. So yeah, that'd be my one big piece of advice, because I don't think homeschooling, it's you're like learning by yourself. I don't think it's meant to be done alone. That makes sense.
Sounds good. Um, so how did you navigate through this college admissions process since you don't have you kind of
Sorry.
have classes from the community college and
Mm.
like it doesn't it's not like you can just it's not like a set thing that you can get from the
Mm-hmm.
public school and then have the counselor write your recommendation letter and so forth. So when you're applying for schools, like what did you do to I think that's a lot of the question a lot of also the parents have because they're kind of like how do
Mm-hmm.
they apply for school?
Right. So similarly to the parents, my parents and myself, we were very confused and we were really unsure what what college applications would even look like for me. That was like another concern of my mom's when I was trying to figure out what to do for school. Between ninth and 10th grade, she was like, "We don't know if you can even get into college. Like, do they take homeschoolers? Like, I have no idea. None of us knew like what it would look like." And so going into college application season, my mom and I met with like a college counselor outside of the charter school that I was with, just to try to get like an opinion, like an honest opinion, like can I get into college as like a homeschool applicant? And the like we talked to like one college counselor, and we talked to other people who were knowledgeable in the area, and they were like, as long as you have a transcript, which I can get from my charter school, and you do well enough on the like standardized test, the SAT or ACT, and you write those essays, like there's nothing disqualifying you from like applying or getting into schools. And so once we heard that, we're like, okay, now we just got to work on those three things. So luckily, yeah, like I said, because I was part of a charter school, they gave me a transcript, and my counselor I had was amazing. She wrote me like a glowing recommendation letter and everything. And yeah, I had a transcript and a recommendation letter already from that counselor. And then in terms of standardized testing, I recognized it was really important for me to do well enough on those ones because with AP test and with like high school in general, there's like fluctuations in the difficulty and the GPA and stuff like that. So sometimes you can't always look at the GPA and be like, that's an indicator of whether they can get in or not. Because with the SAT and ACT, it's standardized. So everybody's taking the same test or the same difficulty of a test. So it just shows that like these community college classes are like really easy. That's why I have like all A's or whatever. It's because I'm actually able to do well on these other tests as well, these standardized tests. So yeah, I took the SAT and the ACT. I took the SAT 3 times and the ACT once. And then I also submitted I took an SAT math too. So I submitted that as well. So I submitted like my highest SAT score, my ACT, and my SAT math score. And so those are things that I submitted. So those were kind of, I feel like those helped me in a way because it kind of showed college admissions, like where I was at academically. Because like I said, GPA can be inflated. I feel like you can't trust GPA these days. Like people have 5.0 GPAs, but you're like, do you actually understand what you're learning? Like, can you pick up things later on when you're in college? So I think those are a good indicator because it can change from school to school. Whereas the standardized test, it's something that's consistent throughout the state or throughout the country. So I would definitely prioritize that if you feel like you can do well on those tests. And then I worked a lot on the essays, and I feel like those essays are what helped me stand out. I also think being a homeschooled applicant actually helped me stand out. The school that I was at, like I said, it's very competitive. I think my year, I think like 30 students got accepted to UC Berkeley. It's just super, super high caliber students. And there's a ton of people who got accepted to Ivies. I think 3 girls got accepted to Stanford just in 1 year, in my year alone. And that's just one high school. So I was at a very competitive high school. Like I said, that chugs out students who go to top schools. And so I think if I had been at public school at that school, I don't think I would have stood out as much because I don't even know how they like managed to do all what they wrote in their resume or in their essays. I just don't know how they did it. It's just like they must not be sleeping or something. So I think, yeah, being a homeschool applicant, they put you in a completely different pool than the one in your area, at least for the UCs. If like, for example, if I was at Woodbridge High School, I'd be competing against Woodbridge students or Irvine students to try to get into, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC San Diego, all those schools. Whereas if you're a homeschool applicant, you're competing against other homeschooled students. And so obviously the pool is a lot smaller and it may not be as competitive. Like, I don't think it was as competitive as my Woodbridge friends. Like, I find that hard to believe. So I think it actually helped me stand out. And then, like I said, I spent a lot of time on my essays. I feel like my experience from homeschooling gave me a lot. Yeah, I made my application more colorful. And it definitely was different because, one of my essays I wrote about convincing my mom that I was capable of homeschooling myself. And that was like one of my essays. I think it was one of my really good essays because I thought it was pretty funny because I had to create a PowerPoint actually for my mom. Right. And I had to like outline exactly what I was planning to do and everything. And so, yeah, I think, I can't promise that because I was homeschooled, that's why I was able to like do well in this like college application season. But I do think homeschooling helped me stand out a lot. Like I said, I honestly don't think I would have been able to get into schools that I did get into if I was at Woodbridge High School because it's just so competitive when it comes to college apps. So yeah, that kind of would be my experience from navigating the application season, which is coming up for juniors who are seniors. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for parents if the child suddenly comes and says, like I would like to homeschool myself in high school? Do you have any advice for the parents, like how we can be more supportive of the child?
The first thing I would say, like I said, my dad was all in, but that's just because my dad is my dad. As some of you guys who are
They can
listening
always go
found
back to
out.
public school if it doesn't work
Yeah,
out.
yeah. Um, Whereas, yeah, my mom, went to a public school. She went to an Ivy League, became a doctor. So she was like, I know public school works. Public school, like, it helped me get onto this path and whatnot. So if I were a parent and my child came up to tell me that, I think I would have had a similar response to my mom. I would have been like, show me how you're going to do it. It's easy to say, oh, I'm going to homeschool. It's harder to like, you have to I spent hours like planning and trying to figure out like how I was going to get to class. I was, I think, 14 at the time, and so
You
I
took
couldn't
like
drive
bus and
anywhere.
stuff, right? Like, I
I
mean, your
took
parents are
so yeah,
working.
I would take a bus to and from school, and I would also bike sometimes because I was going to two different campuses, and so I would go to the bus for one campus and I would bike to the other campus. And so yeah, just like I had to prove and show to my mom that I did my research. I knew how I was going to get through it. Obviously, the plan wasn't like perfect, but at least I proved to her like I was serious enough where I looked into things deeply. I like found like which bus route I was going to take. Like it was very extensive. So I think that'd be like my first piece of advice to parents is because, like I said, it's a lot easier to say, oh, I'm going to homeschool than to like bust out a 20-minute PowerPoint and be like, this is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure I hit my ATG requirements by taking these classes. This is the school I'm going to enroll in. This is how I'm going to enroll in the school. Because it's not super complicated, but it's also not super easy to just enroll in community college as a high school student. It's a process. Like you have to get approved by your charter school or by like a homeschool to like even be able to take classes. So that's something to consider as well for parents who are like who have kids who are asking if they can homeschool. So that'd be like my first piece of advice. And then in terms of being supportive, that's hard for me, I think, because like I said, my parents were not super involved.
Well, they had faith in you after a while. They knew that you were doing well. I mean,
Yes, I think
that's
yeah,
part
just
of parenting too.
believing in your believing in your kids that they can do it. Maybe I'm trying to think of like how my parents supported me. Because like yeah, I paid for the bus fare. Sometimes they would drive me to school if it was like raining. I'm trying to think of other ways. Oh, I think well, I was struggling. I think I was taking a math class that I was having trouble with, and I tried going to my professor. It was just not a good professor, and then my class there's just like classmates who weren't super helpful either. So I did reach out to my parents, and then we agreed that like getting a tutor would be a good fit. So they helped me get a tutor and everything. So I think they supported me in different ways. I think knowing that they trusted me, that they like knew that I could do it too, was like a very empowering for me. I think the first year that I did it, my sophomore year, knowing that my mom was skeptical was also a huge motivating factor. Because I was like, I want to prove you wrong. Like, I can do this. And she told me I think she told me like after I graduated high school that like during my sophomore year, after my sophomore year, she thought I was going to go back to public school, actually. She didn't think I was going to do it all 3 years, actually. But the fact that she kept supporting me through my junior and senior year, that really means a lot because she like believed in me and knew that I could do it. So yeah, I think that'd be my advice. It's just like believe, like once your child has proven that this is something they can take on, just yeah, believing in them and trusting them that they can do it. Because yeah, I think a huge factor was trust. My parents trusted me with my education. So yeah.
Sounds good. So tell us what you want to do. So what do you want to, are
In the
you,
future.
yes, when you grow up,
Okay,
I feel
okay.
like you are already grown up, but
Okay, so where do I begin? So like I mentioned, I'm majoring in interdisciplinary studies and I'm minoring in global health. And so I feel like a lot of people are wondering what interdisciplinary studies is. At Berkeley, at least, it's this opportunity to take two classes from three different disciplines, and then you write a research paper. So I guess like you could say I'm not taking a super traditional route in college either. I'm kind of making my own path in college as well. And so like I mentioned before, I have spent time traveling, partly because I had more time because I was homeschooling. And so I spent a total of a month over the course of 2 years, a month in Malawi, Africa. And something that is very prevalent there is malaria, and something that I'm really passionate about. And I think that's something that I kind of want to address. And so as of right now, my research for my interdisciplinary studies, like final paper, is going to be around malaria, specifically in Malawi, and addressing the kind of the environmental, public health, and nutritional like aspects to that. So that's kind of what I plan to do. And obviously, I'm minoring in global health. So it's kind of along the same lines. I think in terms of the future, I'm actually, because I got so many units that transferred, I actually get to graduate a year and a half early, which is saving a lot of money for my parents. So they're very thrilled. um, and then after that, I'm hoping to work, get some real world experience. I'm all about real world experience. And then going back to school to get my master's in public health. And then I'm not sure after that if I'm going to continue working in public health or kind of transition to a role in hospital admin, because that's something else that I've experienced. I got to volunteer at a vaccine clinic recently. And then just working, at my dad's private practice, I feel like hospital admin would also be a good fit for me. So yeah, that's kind of right now, as of right now. But things are bound to change. I change my mind often, and my interests change all the time.
And I mean, with your skills and the fact that you are a self-motivated learner, I think, anything you want to achieve, you can go after and learn and make it happen.
Mm.
Um, Thank you so much for being here today. I actually have two questions. So if a student or parents are are thinking about homeschooling for high school, do you have any kind of resources they can look into, get some general information?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. For me, I had a family friend who worked at a homeschool charter called Sage Oak. And so if you're looking for a really great homeschool charter, I'd say you check out Sage Oak. I think in terms of resources, I don't recall off the top of my head the resources that I use. I just looked up on Google like homeschool charter schools and then kind of went from there. Luckily I had a connection with Sage Oak, like I said, and so it was pretty seamless transitioning from public school to that school. But yeah, I think that's. I guess I am a resource. So if people do have questions, you can send them my contact information, and they can always reach out to me and ask me questions about that. Because yeah, I don't recall off the top of my head like any websites or like groups that I used. It was mostly me doing research and yeah, creating that PowerPoint. If people want that PowerPoint, let me know. I can send them the PowerPoint as well.
Sounds good. So maybe you can tell us how we can reach you. What's the best email address?
Mm. I think the best email address to reach me at right now is my college address, my college email address, and that's my full name. So it's SAYANALEE at berkeley.edu. So I think that's the best place to reach out to me, and then from there I can share my phone number. We can do Zoom or whatever works best for people. But yeah, like I said, I'm a resource, and I love sharing about my experience or just listening to people and giving them like my perspective or my advice. And then if people want, my dad can sit in on it as well and give them advice from the parents' perspective.
10 different
I'm
ideas.
curious what he said. Yeah, I'm curious what he said. I'll have to rewatch the video of his. But yeah, so yeah, I
It was
think
very
yeah.
informative.
Okay. But yeah, definitely I'd say yeah, I have people reach out to me quite often sometimes, especially around like before school starts, people will reach out to me and ask me questions. So people can feel free to do that. And like I said, yeah, I'm a resource, and I've gone through, a year worth of college and then 3 years of like homeschooling, and I can talk about that transition as well. So yeah, I'm here for people's questions if they have any.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you so much for your
Of
generosity,
course.
and
Of
I
course.
am so proud of you and so excited for you for what kind of future
Thank
you're
you.
gonna have. So thank you
Mhm.
once again for coming into our group and sharing your experience and
Yes, of
your knowledge
course.
with us. I've learned a lot, and I hope people, when they have questions after watching this replay of this session, that
Hmm.
they will reach out to you. And I know they're in good hands when they reach out to you. So thank you once
Thank you for
again.
having me. Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank you. Bye
bye.
bye.
Thank you so much once again for joining us. So, if you have any questions about homeschooling your child in high school, there is a resource. Sayana said it's Sayana Lee at berkeley.edu, and you can reach her to get some more information. Um, Thank you for joining us. We have one more session coming up next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. And this is also really, really good friend of mine. It'll be our guest speaker is Jean Hong, and she's going to talk about how she combined homeschooling with her daughter's love for K-pop. And just we're gonna just hear from her and learn about her homeschooling her children and the journey. So thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next week. Bye.